Hi everyone, welcome to the very first episode. I'm currently taking the Google Data Analytics course in Coursera, and honestly some concepts felt confusing at first. So I started using AI tools to help me break them down in a way that actually makes sense. And I thought, why not share that with you? This is my learning journey, to comment it. No perfect explanation, just real understanding. Alright, let's get into the first topic.
You know that feeling when you open up a massive spreadsheet or maybe a project management tool and it's just a complete wall of noise?
Oh yeah, it's terrifying.
Right, you've got this big problem to solve. Maybe your customer churn is up or sales are tanking. You have all this data right in front of you. But instead of feeling empowered by it, you just feel completely paralyzed.
Yes. That is the perfect way to describe it. It's classic analysis paralysis. You've got all the raw material, but no architecture to actually build anything with them.
Exactly. And usually for you listening, your instinct, and I know it's my instinct too, is to just start grabbing at it. You just dive into the numbers, throw together a pivot table, and just kind of hope a pattern screams at you.
Which is exactly what you shouldn't do.
Right. Because today on the deep dive, we're looking at a framework called structured thinking. And specifically, we're pulling from this great source material, From Issue to Action, the 6 data analysis phases. And the whole point of this framework is to basically say, stop, do not touch the keyboard yet.
Exactly. It's a roadmap specifically designed to help you make seamless decisions and actually solve business problems without getting lost in that pile of data.
But before we get into the actual 6 phases, ask, prepare, process, analyze, share, and act, I want to clear something up, because when I first read this, I was like, wait, isn't this just the data life cycle?
Yeah, and that's a super common point of confusion.
Yeah.
We definitely need to clarify that right off the bat based on the source material. They are very different things. The data life cycle describes the changes data goes through over its actual lifetime.
Like the biology of the data.
Exactly. How it's created, how it's stored, archived, and eventually destroyed. That happens whether you look at it or not.
Yeah.
But these 6 phases we're talking about today, they are entirely about the human process. It's how you use data to solve a problem.
It's the decision-making framework.
Right. So the mission for today's deep dive is to walk you through these 6 steps to see how a totally vague issue gets transformed into a concrete action.
All right, let's jump in. Step 1 is the ask phase. And I love this because, as we were just saying, it's totally counterintuitive. You don't start by digging into data, you start by talking.
Yes. The core rule here is incredibly simple, but so often ignored. It's impossible to solve a problem if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds obvious, but people skip it all the time.
They do, because a stakeholder will come to you and say, hey, we need a report on marketing spend. And if you just go do that, you're not analyzing anything, you're just taking an order. The ask phase is about finding the actual problem while completely avoiding distractions.
And the source material highlights the importance of context here, right? Taking a step back to see the whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. You have to define the problem and really understand stakeholder expectations. If you don't know what a successful outcome looks like to them, your data won't help.
There are some really good self-reflection questions for this phase in the source that I think are worth emphasizing for everyone listening. The first one is, what are my stakeholders saying their problems are?
And notice it says saying their problems are, because what they say and what the root cause is, well, those are often 2 different things.
Right. And then the second question is, now that I've identified the issues, how can I help stakeholders resolve their questions?
Which sets you up perfectly for the next step. You've figured out what you actually need to solve. So what's next?
Next is phase 2, which is prepare. And when I was reading this, it immediately made me think of cooking. It's like getting all your ingredients out before you turn on the stove.
That's a great analogy. You're deciding exactly what data is needed to answer those questions you just figured out in step 1. You're not just grabbing everything in the fridge.
So what are the actual tasks involved here?
Well, the source mentions a few specific things. First, determining what metrics you actually need to measure. Then locating that data in the database.
Finding out where it actually lives.
Right. But there's another crucial task here that often gets overlooked until it's a disaster. And that's creating security measures to protect that data.
Oh man, yeah, that is so important.
It really is. You're gathering raw materials, and that might include sensitive information. You have to secure it now, during the prepare phase, not after you've already started messing with it.
Okay, so the self-reflection questions the source gives us for the prepare phase are, What do I need to figure out how to solve this problem? And what research do I need to do?
Which keeps you totally focused. You're only preparing what you actually need.
Got it. So we've asked the right questions, we've prepared our ingredients, now we transition to phase 3, which is process, or as the guide calls it, the cleanup phase.
So the cleanup phase, this is the heavy lifting. The mantra from the source material here is, clean data is the best data.
Which implies that a lot of data is inherently dirty.
Most of it is. And you have to fix that before you can do any real analysis. The source gets into some really specific technical tasks here, like using spreadsheet functions to find incorrectly entered data.
Like typos.
Exactly. A typo can totally skew your results. Or using SQL functions to check for extra spaces.
Wait, really? Extra spaces matter?
Oh, absolutely. To a computer, the word apple and the word apple with a space after it are two completely different things.
Ah, I see.
And you also have to remove repeated entries, just basic deduplication.
It sounds like janitorial work, honestly.
It kind of is, but it's vital. But there's another point in the process phase that the source highlights, and it is absolutely critical. This is the stage where you must check as much as possible for bias in the data.
That's a huge point, because if the data is biased from the start, your brilliant analysis is just going to confidently point you in the wrong direction.
Exactly. You have to be super disciplined here. Are you removing an outlier because it's a genuine error? Or are you removing it because it contradicts what you want to find?
So the questions you should be asking yourself here, straight from the source, are what data errors or inaccuracies might get in my way, and how can I clean my data so the information is consistent?
Perfect. So now your data is clean, it's consistent, and it's unbiased.
Which means we finally get to phase 4, analyze, the part that everyone actually thinks of when they hear data analysis.
Right. Finally, we get to do the fun stuff. This involves thinking analytically, sorting, and formatting the data.
This is where we run the calculations.
Yes. You're performing calculations, you're combining data from multiple sources, and you're creating tables with your results. You're actively looking for patterns now.
But the source points out a really interesting shift in thinking here. It's not just about doing the math, it's about storytelling.
That is such an important distinction. The numbers themselves don't mean anything until you weave them into a narrative.
So you're asking, what story is my data telling me?
Exactly. And the source pairs that with another guiding question. How will my data help me solve this problem? It always anchors back to step 1.
And there's a third question here that really focuses on the real world. Who needs my company's product or service? Which reminds you that these numbers represent actual people.
Right. It grounds the analysis. It stops you from just playing with spreadsheets and forces you to connect the data back to human behavior.
All right, so we've found the story, the analysis is done, but we can't just keep it to ourselves. We have to move to phase 5, share.
This is where a lot of analysts stumble. They do the hard work and then just hand over a dense table of numbers.
Yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving end of that. It's not helpful.
Not at all. The source is very clear here. Your results must be summarized with clear and enticing visuals.
Enticing. I like that word. It really emphasizes that you're almost marketing your findings.
You are. You're using tools like graphs and dashboards. And the goal is to show the stakeholders that you have actually solved their problem.
Because if they understand it, that leads to better, more informed decisions and stronger outcomes.
Exactly. If they don't understand it, they won't use it.
Which brings up the empathy aspect. The source gives advice about focusing on the listener during this phase. You have to ask yourself, how can I make what I present engaging and easy to understand?
And my favorite question from the material. What would help me understand this if I were the listener?
It's all about bridging that gap between the technical analysis and the stakeholders' reality.
Precisely. And if you do that well, it naturally flows right into the final phase. Step 6, act.
Act, putting everything we've learned into use.
The source material is quite blunt here. It notes that all the analysis you just did is completely useless without this final step.
Which makes sense. If you know the website is broken but you don't fix it, what was the point of finding out?
Right. So this phase involves providing stakeholders with very specific recommendations based on your findings.
It's closing the loop. And the question the source leaves us with here is, how can I use the feedback I received during the share phase to actually meet the stakeholders' needs?
Because the share phase isn't just a lecture, it's a conversation. You present the enticing visuals, they give feedback, and then you adapt the action plan together.
So that's the journey. Ask, prepare, process, analyze, share, act. It's a really elegant framework. But I want to zoom out for a second because the source ties all of this into that broader concept we mentioned at the top. Structured thinking.
Yes. Structured thinking is the big picture here. The source explains that these 6 steps are really just a method of breaking a complex process down into smaller, manageable parts.
And it defines 4 basic activities of structured thinking, right?
Right. First, recognizing the current problem.
Which is the ask phase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, organizing available information.
Prepare and process.
Third, revealing gaps and opportunities.
Analyze.
And fourth, identifying options.
Share and act. It maps perfectly.
It does. It's a universal way of approaching almost any problem.
There's also a really great note in the source material about career application that I think is super relevant for you listening, especially if you're navigating the data world right now.
Yes, I was hoping we'd get to this part.
The source points out that it is completely normal for data analysts to feel pulled in a few different directions.
It's a very stressful job sometimes. You're sitting between the business needs and the technical realities.
Right. And the advice is that relying on these structured processes is what fills in the gaps and gets you back on track when you feel lost.
It's like a safety net. If you don't know what to do next, you just look at the 6 phases.
Okay.
Have I processed the data yet? No. Okay, that's what I do next. It removes the panic.
It really does. So just to briefly recap our journey today, we started with a vague feeling of being overwhelmed by data. And instead of jumping right in, we learned to stop. We asked to define the problem. We prepare by gathering and securing the right metrics.
We process by cleaning out errors and checking for bias.
We analyze to find the story hidden in the numbers. We share that story using clear, engaging visuals. And finally, we act by making specific recommendations.
From issue to action, it really is a powerful transformation.
It is. I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought on the value of this kind of process. Think about how often we rush to act without first asking or processing. The discipline of these 6 phases ensures the action you take is actually the right one.
That's so true. It slows you down at the beginning so you can move much faster at the end.
But here's something to mull over on your own that kind of builds on everything we've talked about. We view this as a straight line, from ask to act. But what happens when the action you take inevitably changes the environment you're operating in? Does that action simply create a brand new issue, triggering a whole new ask phase?
Oh, an infinite loop of structured thinking.
Exactly. Maybe it's never really over. Something for you to explore the next time you finish a project. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the phases of data analysis.
It's been great exploring this with you.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
And that's the full framework, 6 steps, from spotting the issue all the way to the taking action. Honestly, what helped me most was seeing these steps not as a theory, but as a real thinking process I can use every time I look at that. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you. Take care.